Hello, I am Patrizio Orchiola, and I would like to welcome you today to the last conversation of Cassina Out of the Box just before the summer break. Today I will talk. Today I will talk to Adrian van Hooydonk, and is a Dutch automotive designer who has linked his name to BMW car projects and have been working in the group since 1992. In 2004, he became design director of all BMW, and in the 2009, senior vice president of the whole group of BMW. He was responsible for design models loved and known around the world as X5 and X3, and he also has been responsible for all the latest artist car series. All those artist car artists, they've been part of. They're going to be part of our conversation. Then, hello, Adrian.
Hi, Patricia.
Hi. Here we are. I wanted to say you something. We met 10 years ago, even quite 11, and was the beginning of a work. You asked me, to interact for a concept car as designer. And me at the beginning, I was saying, oh, I don't know very well. It was an honor, obviously, to speak with a person like you. But I was saying, are you sure? Because in some way, I have a point of view, which is, I'm not passionate about cars in the classic way, then perhaps it's going to be a disaster. And I remember you said to me, no, exactly what I want. You have very clear ideas. You were expanding, I think, your interest from, automotive to design to other spheres that were part of your life and education, no, when you were young. Then as you became a designer in a large way in Delft when you were young, and then you became automotive designer. Which were your dreams? And tell me something about your head, your thoughts in when you were a student.
Yeah, when I was a student, of course, I studied industrial design in Delft, as you said. I wanted to do that. I wasn't dreaming about cars, really. I was really dreaming about designing all sorts of products. At the time, I saw a television show about Richard Sapper, and he became sort of a role model or somebody that I thought was doing really cool work. I still use his small espresso maker every day.
I have it too.
That sort of started my dream of one day going to Italy, working in Milan, which I did eventually as a student. I got a first job at Studio Bonetto, working for Rodolfo Bonetto. And that was very interesting, apart from the fun side of Milan. We had a lot of fun, right? We worked.
You were a Milanese student at the beginning, no?
Yeah, it was great because for me, coming from a small country, Holland, all of a sudden Milan, that was where the international design scene was happening. So it was for me, that was a dream to work there. And it was a lot of fun. I still have friends from that period. Actually also Rodolfo Bonetto, that was a very interesting designer because he was not just doing industrial design. At the time, he was also responsible for a car interior for Fiat Group.
Okay.
So he was a person that was doing both product design and car design. And that made me think further, okay, maybe cars is possible. Because where I came from in Holland, there's no car industry. Holland has a design tradition more in architecture, in graphic design. Of course, Gerrit Rietveld did furniture and architecture, but car design was not very well known in Holland. So I basically parked that for a lot of years. But then through Bonetto, I thought maybe I should try. And that's what I did after. I studied in Art Center in Switzerland. Then I moved to Munich. I worked in Paris, but I never lost touch with Milan. And I always kept coming to the Milan Furniture
I
Fair
know.
until one day I thought, you know what, we shouldn't just come here as BMW and watch. We should try and play with this creative field. And that's how I thought of contacting you. We didn't know each other yet,
No, no.
but I found it very interesting. So I just tried to directly contact you. And like you said, our first first talk was very funny because, yeah, you said, look, I'm not interested in cars.
Perhaps I'm not good for this situation. I was really, really sincerely thinking perhaps he has another idea of me, no?
Yeah, but the truth is, for me, that made it even
Yeah.
more interesting because
Yes.
BMW
You
goes
demonstrated that to me, later.
yeah, BMW has a lot of fans and they know a lot of things about cars. But for me, it was much more important to try and get in touch with people that are not yet our fans, right? And then if I was talking to you, I realized, okay, you're not necessarily a fan, but you are a creative mind. And if I can trigger your creative mind in some way, and we could do something interesting together, it could be a very interesting learning for us. It could also be sort of a check to make sure that what we are thinking of does not become part of a parallel universe of design. I still want to play in the entire universe of design. So now I'm in touch, luckily still with you, on a regular basis, which I
But you
enjoy
always
very
ask me
much.
to do very different things. Then that
Yeah.
demonstrated me in all this period of time that exactly you can be in relation with different things and different kind of situations, different human beings, different interests, and you put them together. You were asking me to speak with do conversation with the designer of Mini or with the electric car designer, was an engineer, fantastic, and I didn't know how to find a way to do it in Barcelona. I remember that day that was really, really interesting. Or you make me do a kind of little laboratory with the team of BMW Design Works, which is a division you have for doing research, which is even related with mobility, but with other parts of research, not only mobility even. And I was speaking with a lot of engineers which are there, and I think it's a very interesting, strange team, which is not only focused on, you know, the idea of a car. As many times I speak with young people that I approach the studio, they say to me, Patrick, if I want to study automotive, where I have to go, you know, Torino, there are many places in Italy, and we know they are very good schools. But when I speak with them, sometimes I say, perhaps I would like that they understand the way that Adrian was approaching, because I think at the end, obviously, what I wanted to say, for me, this idea of being in love with speed or with, you know, thinking the shape of an instrument where you have to go inside and the speed is the driver, that was my, I was saying, perhaps even in a bicycle, I go slow. I don't have this kind of, it's better I walk. I do less mess in some way. But you were all the time, I think, approaching the argument from many points of view. And then, for example, I remember when we began, there was the work you've done with Olaf Eliasson, and I like to connect you with that history in my mind. That was at the beginning of my conversation. That was with Olaf.
Yes.
And I began more or less in 2009, and in 2007 you introduced a car that you've been working for a long time, because you were director of design in the company with Olafur. And it was a really incredible, open, new approach to sustainability. Introducing the car was made in even the shape and the last, I think the last skin of the car was made in for frozen metal. Then it was ice. Was not even, then you were not working, you know, like normally with artists that they do a kind of, they use the shape of the car or the metal as a canvas. In that case, was completely changing the concept of that. And I know I would like that you tell me a bit about how was your meeting with Olaf. How was the beginning of this conversation?
Yeah, that's also a funny story. But maybe first of all, I should say that our approach to design is that we want to be smart creative. So
Yeah.
it's not just about the shape. We do think about what is going on in society and what the world will look like in a number of years. And working with you, I know you have a similar approach. And working with Olafur, I realized this is also how he works.
Yeah.
He thinks first about how he sees the world, and sometimes that is a very critical view. In the art car project that we did with Olafur, I was fortunate enough to have a meeting with him. Olafur was given a lot of freedom. He was also given a car that was going to be the basis for his artwork. And then he said he wanted to talk to me, but he invited me to his studio. Because he didn't want to talk to me here in our studio.
Okay.
And so I went to Berlin, I visited his studio, and he showed me around. It was very cool, a lot of cool sculptures. And then in the corner was really just a pile of car parts. And that was what was left of our work, of our design. So the first thing he did with the car that we gave him was to take it all apart. And I think he did it a bit on purpose. We are good friends now. I think he tried to shock me a little bit by just ruining the car first. And then we got into a very interesting and also very intense conversation, which lasted almost an entire day, where he really drilled me with a lot of tough questions. How can you work for a big corporation like this? How can you do this? And how can you be creative in such an environment? And then over time, we discovered that, well, yes, what I'm doing is something of a mix between engineering and art. It's not completely free art. But like an artist, we're trying to offer much more than the sum total of the functions. We also want to create something that speaks to people on an emotional level. And over time, we basically learn to respect each other. He is also running a rather large organization. It's not himself that is doing all this. And of course, he too sometimes has clients that don't immediately understand what he wants to do or support what he wants to do. So there was a lot of stuff that really we had in common. I'm not saying that my work is at his level, but we have a
But you were open. I've seen the car and seen I saw it in the museum, and I think it was very interesting to see it in this frozen room, in this, and people could came inside, and if there was a lot of people in the room, perhaps the car was getting melted. Then there was a kind of relation of time and possibilities of long-term or not so long-term about the new animal, and a live car. There was this new animal, and the human beings were a very interesting interrelation. And I was saying, if they do these kind of things with Olafur, perhaps I can say that I can cover my work of design, and because I'm going to focus on the inside. Perhaps if I say to them, can we do in these 3 months, can we focus in the inside, and we create a kind of architecture, and nobody will see so clearly the Berliner? And you said to me, yes, no problem, send the project. Then what I want to say, this kind of good conversation, they always make us grow. And when I was thinking these days, for example, with the quarantine and in this special moment, I was saying, I think obviously we were all locked down, we were stopped. And then to think about mobility, I think is the right contrast. I think is one of the arguments we have to do, because our cities were even purified because there was no traffic on them. And this is an argument that was going through here. In another side, we were, if we had to use a car at the beginning now of this last month, the car was the safest space. But at the same time, we learn, all of us, to share cars, which is an argument that I think we grow a lot in the last period. You spoke with me a lot about how interesting, perhaps the private way of thinking a car is not the only way BMW is interested. Perhaps there are going to be little communities which will have cars, and they will rent or they will use inside, they will share it, no? Then all these conversations now, they are in a moment very frozen, really, really difficult. Then I wanted to know, so what do you think, what are the conversations inside BMW or you with the person which are nearby you related to this next future, no? Where cars are involved in another way.
Yeah, I think the past few months have been a shock to all of us. We never really expected to be in such a situation. It's something that we will probably not forget for a long time. And I know especially Italy was hit very hard. And I'm sure that it will lead to people reconsidering a lot of aspects of their lives. We as creatives, of course, I think we always have to think about how life is changing and how the things that we design can be relevant to the people, and how can we help in a small way too. So I personally think that through the pandemic, certain things that were already, certain changes that were already underway will be sped up. I believe that in the field of mobility, big changes were already underway before Corona happened. And I think through
which are the changes you think are more, like in this moment, are more interesting?
Yeah, I think mobility was already underway towards an electric mobility. I think we're going to go faster in this direction now. So it could be a positive effect out of this difficult situation. Then we were already working or beginning to think about intelligent mobility, or in other words, how can artificial intelligence make individual mobility better, more efficient, and maybe in a paradox also more human, because cars are very complex machines, but I see it as part of our job to make the whole experience, while it becomes much more technologically complex, to make the experience more human. And I think that's what people long for now more than ever. And then, okay, there was already beginning to happen shared mobility. Maybe that will be slowed down for a few months.
Yeah, I believe strongly about that. I believe a lot.
But I also believe in that, and I think it will come back. It will go back there. At the moment, of course, people are beginning to move around again, and they're very careful. And let's hope that within a few months or a year or so, we can move around a bit freer again. And I think that maybe things are just speeding up right now.
I was thinking, when we speak about the inside, the space in a car, when a car becomes more intelligent, and then you have a possibility of use, now when they show, you ask how many sensors has a car, is incredible, because you have the one that control direction, they control any kind of thing for parking, they are in different kinds of sensors even too. There is quite a complex way of using them, but at the end, for me, all this technology, I understand. I understand the concept, but what I'm thinking, going through these possibilities, I think we are going to be more and more focused on how we live inside that space. Now, then, before we will have the self-driving system that we are waiting for laws, for many other arguments that have to grow. At the time, we will see. There are a lot of laboratories in West Coast, in America, and in other places. Then is an argument. But for me, as people that we are not only passionate about an argument, what I think is the freedom and the speed, which I understand them, and I think they've been, I think, the strong drivers of passion of creating a huge sector like this one. But at the same time, I think evolutions are always interesting. And I'm art director in Cassina, and we were saying when we did a big party about the 90 years celebration of the company. Part of the argument was related to the Mario Bellini Kara Sutra car. That was an incredible visionary, concept of car. And then the idea was, I'm living in a space, but the space is moving. But the idea, it was, they were the 70s. And you know, you love this work. Because the idea was we were gonna be in this capsule, which is moving. Then is a car, but I'm not interested. The idea is how you live it inside. And there were all the behaviors and all the arguments about the 70s inside that project. And Cassina was connected and did the prototype with them. Then it's something which is, I think, in the aim of when we speak from as designers or as architects, and we want to arrive to the word of mobility. We said, obviously, there are little elements of mobility from a bicycle or a little kick, little instrument, you know, but what is important in the car? How you think, coming from this incredible passion of driving from BMW, how can you connect that with the Kara Sutra attitude that I think is going to be more and more important in future?
I completely understand, and that's what I saw also in our project together. When you said, look, I don't really want to deal with the exterior of the car, I just want to show an interior, because that's what interests me more. That immediately resonated with me, because at the time, and this is, I believe now, almost 10 years ago, at the time, I felt that really we should begin to think more from the inside of the vehicle towards the outside. Now, you have to know that if you look at the history of cars, for many, many years, the engineers worked on putting an engine, putting some luggage, and then the people had the space that was left.
Yes, there was the left off.
Right, and then maybe it was not a lot of space, but...
and a bit of leather.
The thing was moving, right? So now, I believe the technology, especially if we're talking about electric motors, the technology is getting a little bit smaller. Now I think we really can begin to think in the other way around, and we are now. And your project was one of the first that actually also helped me inside our company to explain this thinking. We need to create a living space that is moving, and that in its aspects of aesthetics and detailing is not completely different from a house or from a living room. Because we're talking to the same customers, the people that are buying your furniture. Perhaps also by...
The audience is always the same. It's us. It's
and it
us with all our...
it should be clear that it's meant for human beings. And we are still working on this path. And while the technology gets more complicated, we are talking about shy tech. And that for us is the exact opposite to high tech. You know, the 80s or 90s, it was all about high tech. If you had more switches in the car, you made a better car. That was sort of the thinking, and you were a better driver because you could control all these complicated things. Today, I believe people don't care so much about that anymore.
We care less, or the conversation is much more complex. And I think you can approach a car with many other kind of point of views, I think.
Yeah, I think the same is happening in fashion, right? 20 years ago, if you wanted to look chic, maybe it was uncomfortable. But today, people are no longer prepared to make such compromise. They want to be well dressed, but at the same time comfortable. And why is it not possible? It begins to be possible. And so the same should be true, I think, for a car. If it drives well, why should it be uncomfortable? Why could it not be like a living space? And that's what we're trying to do. And like I said, we call that shy tech. The technology is shy. It is not visible. It is not there if you don't need it. But if you need it, it will help you. It will be there. It will be then at your service. And for many, many years, new technologies have come. And people have always said then, okay, this will make your life easier. But in most cases, it wasn't true. It made your life more complicated. And we are really on a mission to try and have the new technology, but deliver it in a way that it will make people's lives easier, more relaxed. And time, of course, is incredibly precious now. People make, I think, very deliberate choices about who they spend time with and how they spend that time. Yeah, I think that is really what we need to focus on in the design of our
I think if we have more and more the possibilities of working at home, and this period make us was a laboratory. We could really try to understand how this could all the digital media really helped us as we are doing now. I began to do this conversation because I couldn't do anything for the company. I was saying then we speak with all the with some person that I think they were really interested that and they could help to enlarge our conversation, and we don't only keep speaking with artists or designers. And but at the same time, what I think is more and more, if I have, for example, a part of there was, for example, an exhibition in New York before the lockdown from Brain Coolage, countryside, and was part of one conversation that exists in this moment about urbanism. Many artists are speaking that the possibility that the cities, they are going to be always strong spaces that people will always access and they will grow. But at the same time, there's going to be another very interesting, fluent way to understand how we can live, not always interconnected with the cities, but from the outside, and thinking about all what is happening. And then that means you need to have something that moves you from one point to another point. Could be a car, could be the evolution of any kind of public transportation. Obviously, we have both, but the freedom of a private instrument is always, I think, still being too much connected, with for security, for many arguments. Driving, for me, must be the place where you are doing your moment of concentration, or the moment you are doing your gym, or the moment you are doing something, or the moment if someone arrives to Milan, or I am in Rome. I was thinking the other day, before the lockdown, walking through Rome, we said, someone arrived to this incredible city. You will love to put them inside your little capsule, I don't know of what, and then move this person through the city having a meeting. And that will happen the day we have a self-driving system. Then obviously, I look at the argument from my point of view, which want to see the things with easy terms. But if you think the young designers that now are really strongly listening to us, and they say, well, but in any case, I'm have passion for speed, for cars, for all the kind of mobility instruments. Even I hope they are interested the same way from a bicycle or to a car, because I think I love how you think should be an ideal new school for it must be an automotive school, or must be mobility in a very large sense school, and how you think should be different from the ones they are today. How is your idea of an ideal school?
That's a difficult question.
Just say something very sincere. It's not important that we say the word or we change everything.
Well, I believe, first of all, if I start with mobility itself, I have a 5-year-old kid, and I realized, and I try not to tell him too much about what I'm doing, right? But I realized that on a bicycle or something, the kid enjoys movement. And there is something that maybe is very deep inside human beings. I don't have a dog, but if you have a dog, the dog tries to put his nose out of the car window too. Even the dog likes movement. So there seems to be something about movement that people, maybe animals, like. Now, so that gives me hope, because, obviously people have an emotional connection to this. Now, we need to make sure that emotional connection can continue to happen. Right now, as we discussed, there is a lot of changes going on in the field of mobility, and they need to happen also fast, because we need to address the negative aspects of individual mobility. Of course, there is also changes. When I was young, the driver license was the first thing you wanted to get. I know.
And now it's not so an issue.
No,
it's an argument very interesting.
I know, but let's say people may maybe get it at a later stage.
We will find other ways.
Yeah, to come to your question about schools, I myself studied industrial design at the Polytechnic, which was not bad. It was not really focusing on design in an artistic sense so much, but it helped me understand problem solving, and it learned me certain things about how to corner a problem, and how to make a big problem smaller, and how to create several solutions, and in the end arrive at a result. After that, I went to Art Center, which was purely about sketching, drawing all day. Today, in the work that I do, sketching is still important, because everything that happens after prototype building is quite expensive. So I love sketching. I always have, and I still love today looking at the sketches that my team makes. So these ingredients for me were all helpful. I don't think, or maybe there is by now, a school that makes the right combination. Because as a designer, I feel you have to be able to communicate very well in words, but also visually. You have to be able to put your thoughts down on paper, and you have to be able to think beyond what you're doing. You have to, of course, be a thinking creative and address all the aspects of mobility or the products that you're working on, and maybe address a few more. So that's what I would like to see in a design school. And often people that come to us have sort of put their curriculum together in their own way. Because if they haven't found it in a school, they visited several schools, or they made sure that they made some professional experience in one or two companies. I think today students are also quite creative in making sure that they get the right experience. And maybe one school doesn't really offer this. But that's what I would look for.
But you know, I was sometimes when they ask me, I go, you know, what do you think? If I have so this normally is a boy, he's interested on automotive cars, design. Then how can you give an advice? And I was saying, first, I'm thinking about that, and I say, I think with Adrian, he teach me another thing. From two sides, from the I think if we are speaking about this argument, I think we have to speak about gender. I think gender new situations. I think, and first, the woman, the director of the team, or the team organizer, the person who has all the responsibility of the work I've done with you, of this concept car. And we didn't have a lot of time. It was complex. It was quite complex situation. I was doing with Giulio Ridolfo, which was a very good friend, and he was strongly related with fabrics, because we were saying we are gonna change the concept, you know, of leather inside the car, and because I think it's searching for better leather, and we're gonna use human skin. Then we did it with the skin, one of the shades of a skin color that was mine. We used the car, we did it with this color, not just like as a provocation, something. But at the same time, there was Martina Stark, I don't say well, Stark, no? Stark, yes. And Martina was the engineer organizing everything and created the team. At the same time, 2 years ago, I was looking, you know, news about the company, and Martina was moving to a new division, which they are doing a lot of research in mobility in a very enlarged way. Then that woman is organizing a team which is thinking, as I will think, I would like to have this as a teacher, if I was a young researcher. And it was a very involved engineer woman with a very open attitude. At the same time, I was seeing one of the last art cars you've done, with this artist from I think from China. She's Kao Fei. She's which is very interesting, and it's a very incredible. It's a car which you have the car becomes like a presence, a black presence, very simple and clean, and you have augmented reality over it. And then the concept of a speed that for this artist is very important. She can't be so well represented. Then she played with augmented reality, which is another, I would say, how there is a page of augmented reality that I think we have to make it interact with our spaces for living, in houses, public spaces, offices. I think in the car is obvious that is I think it's a next door, no, and she was already working on that. It was a woman. Then I was saying, what I think the way you were approaching the work and the conversation with me was for me very. When they asked me about this, I said, I don't know, approach things as Adrian is doing. I don't think only that cars is the sculptures of our life, like, of our speed. Like, it's something more than that. It's an open page for doing many different researches from strong technology to Julian labs, which are really very simplified and connected to simple life. Then when I see you I have a problem with you that which is a nice thing that I normally. I always thought that you gave me a lot, and I think in those conversations it's very important that what I'm sharing with my community. It's not a lot of so thoughts and things. It's more person that they were really changing me the point of view. And me, I always thought I have the arrogance of thinking that would be my work to make you think in another way. And I thought that you, Adrian, you were approaching things in a very good way. Then I still thinking perhaps many designers, we still approach it. You could become a light designer and was speaking in another way. Approaching an argument that is always, when young people approach this, I don't like design, I like automotive design. I always say, no, enlarge the point of view. I go, do as Adrian. I go, that is, and that is for me it's important to say to others and to say to you.
Well, thank you. I mean, all I can say, thank you for the compliments, is that...
But I believe really what I'm saying.
Okay, yeah, I mean, I come from a general design, industrial design background, and I've always had an eye for cars, or I liked mobility and cars. When I was young, actually, Pininfarina Bettone, it was the Italian designers that caught my imagination. But, you know, I always knew it is part of popular culture. This is in fact something that I talked to Rem Koolhaas about quite a bit, because between architects and car designers, you actually have the shared responsibility for how the world outside our window looks to a large extent. Funny enough, Rem Koolhaas is also actually in favor of mobility. He's not against it. I thought an architect would have a problem with us car designers, because you have to design all these parking spaces and these parking structures. But luckily, it's not the case. He knows and loves mobility.
Part of the complexity that we have to...
But the fact of the matter is also that I know that mobility is something for everybody. So I don't want to just work for a small section of hardcore mobility fans. I think it's more important to be aware of what people that are interested in art and design in general are thinking, because if we can do things that are relevant to them, then I think we have a good chance. Yeah, because otherwise maybe we're talking to too small of a community, or we stay in our own universe, and that I think in the end for any company would be dangerous. So that has always been my approach. I believe that as a designer, you have to have very fine antenna, and normally you have that, for what is happening in the future. Because often what is going to happen in the future is already here, but you have to really have these fine antennae. You have to look for it a little bit. If it's very obvious, then okay, then you're too late. And I see my role, as part, more or less as being more in touch with the outside world than than working inside my team. And luckily for me, the company allows me to do it that way.
I think we can end the conversation. The important thing is to, I think, remember that I think for 10 years I share with you this I believe strongly in contaminations. I think contaminations in the creative process is, I think we totally agree in that thing. And I hope this is something that we can share with others. And I really, my path with you. For example, I was remembering the last work we've done. You were saying to me, come to BMW in the main home of the company, and I wanted you help us to do part of in the Welt. You can do, when you get in the entrance, you can do something with this space. And then I went there and was saying, oh, it's difficult because they want to do in their way. No, always. Then if I want to eliminate all the lights, they will say impossible. If I want to, I was with a lot of little prejudices, and we break all of them. Then another time I said, well, perhaps it's always you, which is you don't personally you have to approach. I was, for example, proposing you. We just create a space. We use this new robot that they create. A 3D base, a kind of new flooring, and we do this kind of new way of approaching with the 3D printing, and we can work in a way, and just began to say that everybody yes. Then we suffer because it was complicated, because there was a company in Netherlands that they only did the floor for an airport, and it was quite experimental. And then we had to introduce that inside Belt, which was a place that you have to take care because a lot of people is coming, and the process must be very clean and correct. And we did we did it. Yeah. We did it. Everything was possible.
Yeah, to me, that was another great contribution that you made to us. In spirit, but also in reality, because the project that you talk about happened in the biggest showroom that we have here in the heart of Munich. And we were looking at portraying or making a setup, a display for our top-of-the-line cars. And I immediately thought of you again, because I find that in your work, you really are able to combine something of high class with something very, very human in its approach. It is not excluding, it is actually a very inviting type of luxury. And up until this moment, I believe BMW was always doing very clean, very nice dealerships. It looked very good. Not overly luxurious, but in my mind, a little bit too clinical. Not so engaging, maybe not so emotional. With that, there was always a strong contrast. The car was the star, and the dealership is very clean and minimalistic. But I felt that in the work that you did, you gave us a very interesting new way of doing things, which I believe is very modern, because it is more, like I said, more human, more warm. It is luxurious, but not in an exclusive or excluding kind of way. And that, I think, opened again our minds and gave us some inputs that I believe still today are very valuable. So I can only thank you for that. As I thanked you before also for your input on our interior design thinking, or our view on mobility as a whole. And I'd like to keep up this contact as a way of sparring and thinking about the future together.
But Ecco, I said you hello, and I say hello to everyone. Then I hope we meet in short time, and I say ciao to everyone.
Ciao.